When you looked into the seal's eyes, you could see the human being looking out. But when you heard the woman singing, you could hear the sound of the sea in her voice. Still unsatisfied as to whether the Selkies were mainly seal or human, I would indicate to my mother that I was ready for her to go on by burrowing deeper into the covers and closing my eyes. I knew my mother had some place to be, and the story could detain her only so long. If she didn't think I was falling asleep, I risked losing the story altogether. And so it happened that on that one day a farmer went down to the sea. "Did he go to collect seashells for his garden paths?" I would ask, "the way Joseph said they did in France." Joseph had worked at all the finest hotels in Europe after the war. On his right forearm, just visible when he rolled up the cuffs of his faded blue work shirts, were faint numbers, the same color as the shirts he wore. "Yes, a path of seashells sounds nice," she would say, smiling. She liked it when I thought up new details for her stories. He wanted the path to his house to glow in the moonlight like broken pearls. That's what he was thinking about when he looked up and saw, sunning herself on a rock, a girl with skin like crushed pearls and hair as dark as coal. Black hair, like my mother, like me. Recently, I found my mother's old book of Irish folk tales that contained the Selkie. The Selkie in it is blonde. My mother must have decided to make the heroine of her story dark-haired like us. The dark-haired girl with pearl skin sang like something you might hear in a dream, sweeter than anything you'd hear in a theater or Carnegie Hall even. Here, if I peeked, I'd see that my mother, her eyes still closed, wore the expression of someone listening to music. She'd be quiet for a moment, and for once I wouldn't fill the silence with a question, because I thought, if I listened carefully enough, I would hear what she heard too. All I did hear, though, were the muffled footsteps and hushed whispers of the night maids and the groan of the old elevator taking late diners back up to their rooms. If there was singing, it would be one of the retired music teachers who rented attic rooms for the summer. As soon as my mother opened her eyes, I'd snap mine shut. And so the farmer fell in love with the dark-haired girl and decided he wanted her for a wife. But when he tried to get closer to the rock where she sat, she heard him and dived into the water. The farmer stood on the shore watching for the girl, sure that she couldn't stay in the water for long. Then he saw, out beyond the breakers, a sleek, dark head appear. But she wasn't a girl anymore. She was a seal, I would say, forgetting in my excitement to make my voice sound sleepy. Yes. The farmer stood for a long time, looking at the ocean, thinking over what he had seen, or what he thought he had seen. But at last he remembered he had cows to milk and chickens to feed, and so he turned his back to the ocean and went on home. But he couldn't forget the dark-haired girl and her beautiful voice. No, he couldn't. Could you? My mother always asked me the same question, but no matter how many times she asked it, I was always unprepared. Not that I doubted that I, too, like the farmer, would have been smitten by the dark-haired singer. But there was something in the way my mother asked the question that made me think I should answer differently, that I should have been able to resist the Selkie song. After all, look what happened to that poor farmer. He was so lovesick for the Selkie girl that he was unable to sleep, and the sound of the ocean, which he'd heard since the day he was born, began to grate on his nerves. It seemed that there was always sand in his bed, no matter how many times he'd shake out his sheets, and even with all the windows open, he'd feel as if he were suffocating inside his cottage. I could always hear, in this part of the story, an edge in my mother's voice. When I was little, I thought it had to do with the sand in the sheets. My mother had been a hotel maid, after all, and she would often tell me how rude it was when guests left cracker crumbs or worse in their beds. But later, I guess the edge in her voice had more to do with her own trouble sleeping. Things went on like this until the farmer began to neglect his fields. His cows went unmilked, and his hens wandered into his neighbors' yards looking for food. In desperation,